Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging hour discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Kuchera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome in. Good afternoon. Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. Before we get started and I introduce my guest, let me just go through a couple of reminders for you. You can listen to us every single day, Monday through Friday, from 3 to 4 Pacific Daylight Time. We are on the radio at KDOW 1220 AM. You can also listen to us online at kdow.biz. Just go onto the website, click the button that says Listen Live. You can listen to the show anywhere during this time period. Also, we're streaming live on Facebook, so check in, let us know, give us any questions or thoughts you have. We're on Facebook every single day, as long as we're in the studio. Lastly, be sure to download the podcast. That's for the people, obviously, that are on the go, busy. Listen to the show when you want, at your convenience. You can go to iTunes and type in Real Estate Radio Live, or you could go to our website, which is reradiolive.com, and just download the podcast. That we can listen to the show anywhere. The focus, as always, since I've started the show over 7 years ago, is education and information. The objective will be the same. What I try to do is have great guests like today, content, pass on to you, the consumer, to make you a more wise, educated consumer, really in and around all aspects of real estate. And that's the goal, the objective. Lastly, if you want to get your calls on the air during the show, sometimes we do when we have guests, 1-800-516-1220. If you have any questions for me or my guests during the show, 1-800-516-1220. All right, let me invite my guest in, longtime friend and business associate, Mr. John Montgomery from Montgomery Appraisals. Good to have you here, John.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So we're going to talk appraisals, and I know for you out there listening to the show, primarily our listeners are in the Bay Area, John, but you know the podcast goes throughout the United States. We even have some, believe it or not, some people out of the country that are tuning in and download the podcast. I think there's a certain intrigue to Silicon Valley. So we're going to talk a little bit about appraisals today, and if you have any questions, let us know. In a market like this, most of you know if you're listening to this show, you're thinking, oh my God, you know, what is my house worth today? That's always the kind of the theme. That's where Zillow really got their name. Everybody went on to try to figure out what their house is worth. And we have a crazy market right now. So we're going to try to talk a little bit about that, explain a little bit from the appraiser's point of view. Most of you, if you've done a refinance or if you've done a purchase, you understand that the bank, the lender, requires an appraisal. And so you get a licensed appraisal, someone like John that comes out, and he or she will appraise the property, and really that's what the bank lends on, and they rely on the expertise of the appraisers to come back, hopefully, with what the purchase price is, and you never know what that is. So before we get started, John, why don't you, if you can maybe give the listeners a little bit about your background, how long you've been doing this, and then just kind of a quick update for us.
Yeah, I've been appraising for 25 years in the Bay Area, all Santa Clara County, San Mateo County. Some Santa Cruz. Yeah. Family business. My brother and I work together. Montgomery Appraisal. Yeah. It's my career.
And he's very good at it, too. So you and your brother, and you guys been 25 plus years, I know, very familiar. Mostly, would you consider mostly kind of South Bay or the general Santa Clara County with that area of expertise, you think? Or
I would say for me it's South Bay. Okay. And my brother is Santa Cruz now. Does a lot of that in San Mateo. But we do it all. We can become competent in any area. We've done enough of them over 25 years.
Well, what I always like to do, John, when I have guests, especially when people, I never want to assume there's experts out there, right? You're the expert in appraisals. So maybe you could give the listeners just kind of like an appraisal 101. In other words, you know, this is what happens. I get a call or I get notified by the bank, you know, and kind of take the consumers through your life, what happens to you when you get assigned that appraisal, when you decide to take it. And then kind of take us through what your job entails from start to finish.
Yeah, so for a lender, we get it through the management company. And, you know, we have our ladies schedule it, inspect the property, measure it, just get the physical characteristics, locational issues. And then we get comps. And people always ask, what's a comp? Right. And the answer to that is if if I'm going to buy the house I'm appraising, I'm going to find 6 to 8 other homes that would compete with it.
Okay.
And use those to compare to the subject property.
Okay.
And then, depending on condition change or difference in condition, difference in locations, we make adjustments, and that's all based on match pair analysis.
Right.
And then you come into a final reconciliation of value. Okay. And that's basically, it's my opinion of value. Right. It is not a math formula. I think people get confused thinking it's Zillow. It's not.
That's a good point, yeah.
It is more art than it is science, and it's our expertise of doing it.
Right.
And it's, you get 10 guys to appraise, 10 appraisers to appraise a very difficult property. You're going to get 10 numbers that are a little bit different. Uh-huh. If you get 10 appraisers to appraise a very standard tract house, you're going to get 10 very similar numbers. And it's not math. Right. And people get very confused, like, well, it should be just price per square foot. I don't even look at that.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about that, because we're going to address a lot of stuff. You mentioned Zillow. I know that I think more people now realize it's not, the all to end all with every single time they see a number on Zillow. What should people think or know about when they punch the address into their home and it comes up and Zillow says this? What should they know about that number? Where are those numbers coming from?
It's their own computer program, and they don't have anyone seeing it physically looking at the property. They may not know you back a high electrical tower or you back a freeway. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take that into account, nor does it take into account if you remodeled the inside of the house. It has no idea that happened. Right. Or you added something, then the county record hasn't caught up with it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of issues that it's not going to be an accurate number. Now, if it's a tract development with condos that every third condo is identical and there's a lot of sales, it's going to be pretty accurate. So it's not a terrible tool. It's just I wouldn't rely on it to the end all be all. Okay.
And you mentioned comps. So typically you get 6 to 8. Now are those? So these are sales in those areas over a 6 to 8 month period, or how do you look at that?
A good way to explain appraisal is you want to use the 3 C's. Okay. Close, clone, and current. Okay. Something close by, something similar, and something current. All right. Current takes care of your market change. In this market, today, it's the most important to get a current comp because the market's going up so quick. Right. And you want to use the 3 C's. Now, in most cases, you don't have 6 comps that are close, clone, and current. You got to use maybe the 3 D's: distant, dated, and dissimilar. And that's when you make a lot of adjustments, and it's more complex. And you have to use those if there's not enough data. So.
Got it. And are appraisals for refinances different than purchases in any way? I mean, you're still looking at the same numbers to a certain extent, but I would think maybe purchases are a little more difficult because you're trying to assign a value. Talk a little bit about that.
People always say, it's a refi, you're going to come in low. Yeah. What we try to do, if you get a purchase appraisal, you look at the price, the sales price. We have that contract price when we do an appraisal. And is it supportable? And sometimes in this increasing market, it's the new high in the neighborhood. It's not supportable. Now, refi, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to get a number, or find the market value of that property. I don't think there's any difference in difficulty. It's just, you're trying to support the sales price if possible. Right. And if it's not supportable, it's not supportable.
Right. And so in the consumers don't know much about in terms of how in the old days, you and I were just talking before we came on air, how our business was much easier because I would have a relationship with someone like you and trusted you, and you were in a certain area, and, you would be the perfect fit. Me as a lender or broker, I'd pick up the phone, or that'd be part of the process. I'd call you. Now it's entirely different. It's been changed with the whole Dodd-Frank thing and everything that changed. What is maybe? Can you give us some insight? Not to get too kind of political in terms of this, but from a consumer's perspective, how has the appraisal process changed at all, or is it just really more internally difficult for me and you to deal with behind the scenes, so the consumer really doesn't see much more of that challenge?
Yeah, I think it's more difficult. I mean, they're sending appraisers to areas they're maybe not experts in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And that's, I would do a certain area that I'm an expert in. They know I was the expert. Now it's like, go to San Mateo. I can figure it out, but I'm not as good maybe as a really good San Mateo appraiser. Right. And then I think the consumer is going to pay a little bit more for an appraisal because the management fees in between us and you, right? They got to take a chunk. So the fees have gone up, and I think that's the only real difference. I still do the same job I've done before. Yeah,
right. We got about 2 minutes before our first break. What would again? This is majority consumers listen to the show, although we have a pretty good following with our industry. We have a lot of real estate agents, loan people in our industry that follow the show. But from a consumer's perspective, like, for instance, what should they be prepared for? Let's say, on a refinance, you come out to the property. Do they need to be prepared or armed with any information, John, like to share with you, or you have pretty much everything anywhere? Or is there some insight that they could glean and help you doing your job?
Well, I mean, any major remodeling or anything like that they've done to the property is helpful, and we'll note it in the appraisal. We'll notice it anyway, but it's good to, the more information we get, the better.
Right.
I like when a realtor gives me information at a property for a purchase. I enjoy that, and some appraisers don't, but I think it's good because I might miss something. I'm not perfect.
Right.
And, they may be even more of an expert in the neighborhood. So the consumers should, just tell us about the property, what they've done to it, and we'll notice everything else.
Right. So anything particular that they may know about their personal property, maybe some upgrades, remodels, or something that they did. What type of I think I'll wait till I take a break. I'm going to start getting into really, when I come back, I think I want to talk more about specific parts of a house and a structure and a property, like what different values you assess to. Does that make sense? We'll talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back. We have a great guest in studio today, John Montgomery with Montgomery Appraisals. If you have any questions during the show, 1-800-516-1220. I got to believe someone's out there just bleeding to ask some questions about our appraiser. 1-800-516-1220. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live for the Facebook viewers. Stick with us. We're going to take a break for a couple minutes, and we'll be back on the live show in just a couple minutes.
For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
The world is changing, and so is real estate. It's changing in ways that give consumers more control with more affordable options. So what are your options? Hi, this is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. I've been on the air educating and informing consumers for over 7 years now. I'm excited to announce that there is now a more efficient and cost-effective way to buy and sell real estate. Our team at Real Estate Radio Live is launching a new program designed to help buyers or sellers like you in real estate, lending and title. That's right, we'll coordinate the entire transaction for you. So you benefit by working with the same team, saving time and saving money. We'll guarantee you'll not only be working with the most qualified, hand-picked experts in real estate, lending, and title, but you will also save a significant amount of money in all three services as well. Act now and benefit from changing the world of real estate. Call 408-838-9060. Go to RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live, streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back in. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. We're with you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We're streaming live on Facebook. Join us. For those that are listening on the radio, feel free to jump in, watch us on Facebook. Also, most importantly for everybody, be sure to download the podcast. That way you can listen to the show when you get a chance at your convenience. You could do that at iTunes. Just type in Real Estate Radio Live, or you go to our website, RERadiolive.com. Today we have John Montgomery in the studio. He is a licensed appraiser with the Montgomery Appraisals company and in the business for 25-plus years. We're talking about appraisals, really. The first segment, John shared with us kind of like the basic appraisal 101 for consumers to know. And what we're going to try to do is have a conversation really for you, the consumer, so you could better understand how the appraisal business works, what John's faced with, how he comes up with values. There's so many different things that go into this. And there's a lot of interest because, and we'll talk later in the show too, like how do we handle, for instance, just a market that continues to go up, right? There's this, we talked about a little bit, the new high in a certain neighborhood. All of a sudden one house appraised at $1.3 million, and a week later is that same house appraised for $1.35. I mean, it's a crazy market, and you have to know what you're doing. So John, let's talk a little bit about one of the things that intrigues people, and I think I always get questions about too, and they're always like puzzled, like how do you assign value to certain things? For instance, maybe you could just kind of walk us through. The obvious is square footage, right? I mean, if something's at 600 square foot, maybe that's pretty obvious, and your home's bigger, so maybe you assign value to that. But then, what about upgraded kitchens and bathrooms and swimming pools and weird stuff like, oh my God, I just spent, like I said, example, $300,000 in landscaping. My backyard's beautiful. Take us through kind of the typical house with some of these, ordinary things and some of these crazy things, and how do you assess value on those?
It's a great question. Typically a house, we base it on comps that are sold that are similar.
Okay.
And, people always say, should I remodel my kitchen? The one I get all the time is, should I put a swimming pool in my house?
Oh, yeah.
And I go, if you like to swim, if you want to make money, don't do it. I mean, a swimming pool can cost you $75,000
right.
With the landscaping around it, and you'll get maybe 25 or 30 from the market.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it works. So there's no real hard set rule saying you remodel a kitchen, it costs you $50,000, you're going to get 50 or more out of it. It really is. It's not. We don't break it down to the minutia.
Got it.
It's the overall condition of a property. You may remodel your kitchen beautifully, and the person who looks at it doesn't like the design or the look of it, and they're going to remodel it again. And so there's no real hard set rule on that. We take the overall location, condition, quality of a house and compare it to similar location, condition, and qualities, and then come up with the number. Like I said before, it's not math. It's mostly most of it's our opinion. The conditions are an opinion. The locations are opinion. So there's a lot of opinion to it.
Right.
And there's no math formula that can do this. It just is the way we do it. So.
And that's why it's so important, you mentioned early, to not only have the knowledge and the background like you do, but the location. I mean, even you've been doing it long enough. I mean, you're honest enough in the way you assess your business. You'll tell someone flat out, I would, I don't know enough about Santa Cruz or maybe San Francisco or Sonoma or something, right? Because, I mean, you could do it if you had to, but that's not your area of expertise.
Well, the term is you got to get competency.
Okay.
And can I get competency in the amount of time to finish a report in any area? Is it worth my time? It would take me a lot longer to do a report in an area I'm not familiar with to get all the data to become competent in that area to do it. So I'll mostly decline those jobs.
Okay. Well, we'll do it a couple times during the show. If someone wants more information about your company, I know a lot of people independently will want to order appraisals. For someone with your expertise, how would they reach you? Do you have a website or phone number? What's the best way to do that?
Website's MontgomeryAppraisal.com, and our phone number is 408-995-6012.
Great. Yeah, if you're out there listening and maybe independently, this happens a lot, estate planning, you need an appraisal on a property that, someone maybe passed away or there's a divorce or all kinds of reasons why a person needs an appraisal and not just for a refinance and a purchase. John and his company would be a perfect fit to do that. Be sure to contact him. So let's get back to the kind of the assessing the different values. We talked a little bit. I mean, you've done your typical standard little tiny home, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, but you've also done some incredible $30-40 million properties, right?
I had a stretch of about 4 years of doing all the highest end homes in the Bay Area, and it's incredibly challenging.
I'll bet.
And, it's definitely difficult to value those because they're all kind of like a piece of art. And one example I have is a guy had a really nice home, and I don't remember the appraised value, but it was on 3 acres in, I think, Portola Valley, and he had it. Area. And it was a beautiful home, but he built this home to his specific needs.
Right.
What that included was an indoor basketball court and an indoor 3/4 size ice skating rink. So that's, the cost of these things is incredible.
Yeah.
So when we appraise it, we got to say, what would the market recognize?
Right.
Would someone who's not into basketball and hockey going to want to buy these?
Yeah.
And so in reality, I had to appraise it not for him, because to him it's worth a lot, but to a typical buyer, they probably wouldn't want an ice skating rink because the cost of maintaining it is super high.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not a lot of people who like ice hockey that much. And so the value was much lower than he probably, and I believe it's worth more to him because he loved these things about his home.
Yeah. And aren't those properties more difficult? I don't want to assume. I'm just asking you, the expert. Aren't those unique properties a little more challenging sometimes to appraise because there's not a whole block of those, right? I mean, it's one thing if you go in a neighborhood and you have pretty similar stuff that's been going on. But if you have something up in Portola Valley or the Los Altos Hills that, they're they're all within maybe 5 or 6 miles of each other, or even more.
Yeah, you go way more than that.
Yeah, that's got to be a little bit challenging.
Well,
I think.
You look at what's the market. The person who's buying that house is going to look all over the Los Altos, the Woodsides, the Athertons. Right. They're going to look everywhere for a home like that.
Yeah.
So it's not a geographical market. It's basically the big area market. And they're all done to their desire. Mm-hmm. And it's so difficult because a typical buyer, there's not a lot of those typical buyers.
Yeah.
There's very few of them who can do that. And that's what makes it super challenging. And really, my opinion of value is my best estimate. It is because it's so individual for those very unique homes.
Yeah. I just thought of something. Do you ever have realtors, because I hear sometimes realtors, they'll get ready to list a home, and of course they'll have the conversation about what they're going to list it for, and then people have their idea, right? Someone might say, oh my God, that koi pond cost me $100,000 and they're expensive fish in there and all that stuff, right? So they get in this conversation with the real estate agent of why that's value, and the real estate agent has to explain to them it really isn't value. And have you ever had real estate agents say, hey, get your feedback on stuff like that?
All the time.
Yeah, I would think.
And then in this market today, though, to be honest, people will say, can you appraise my house? I want to know what it's worth to sell it.
Yeah.
And in this Silicon Valley specific market, I won't do the job because I say, I'll give you an estimate, but it's going to sell what the market will bear right now.
Yeah, that's impossible to guess that.
Because I can't guess what the next high is going to be in that neighborhood.
Right.
And I can't predict the future. So but I do help realtors measure homes all the time when there's a discrepancy between the county and what they think it is. So I do those things for them too. So. Yeah,
I had one a couple of months ago. A real estate agent listed a home up in Woodside, and somehow it slipped through the cracks, and the mistake he made is the potential buyer was an engineer, so he went in with his tape, and he was measuring every single square foot, and he kept coming up with a different 500 square foot number. Well, I think they put like an enclosed patio. They listed it as square footage, and it really wasn't. I think that's where the hiccup was. So they got to be careful when they do that.
You do, and that's why they ask me to measure it to say what's legal, what's not,
right.
And I give my best estimate there. So
yeah. All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about appraisals. If you have any questions for John, 1-800-516-1220, or you can text questions in 408-838-9060. We're talking appraisals today with John Montgomery. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. We'll be back with you to continue the live portion of the show in just a couple of minutes. We'll continue the Facebook feed. We'll be back in just a few.
For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
Hi, this is Joe Kuchera, host of Real Estate Radio Live and Bay Area Mortgage Planner. In addition to being your home financing expert, please remember you could always contact me for other trusted advisors such as realtors, financial planners, and CPAs. Please feel free to contact me at 408-838-9060. That's 408-838-9060, or email joe at RERadiolive.com, or visit my website at RERadiolive.com for more details.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live, streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back in. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. We're with you 5 days a week. Today we're joined in studio by John Montgomery with Montgomery Appraisals, kind enough to spend some time giving us some expertise on the process of appraisals, how they work, how they assess value, kind of the ins and outs. If you have any questions for John during the show, 1-800-516-1220. Maybe you just had an appraisal done. Maybe you're about ready to, and you have some questions you want to be armed for when the appraiser shows up. Or maybe you're working with your real estate agent, and you're not quite sure how the appraisal process works. Your lender should be explaining that to you. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into a transaction, a lot of moving parts. It's very emotional, and John's right in the middle of it, appraising the property. Talk a little bit about the unpermitted stuff, because this comes up a lot too. For instance, and I have it in my property. I mean, I have a Before I bought the house, they did a beautiful job and converted the garage into a detached unit. It's got a full bathroom and all that, but, they didn't get it permitted. So when you come out and you appraise a property like that, you make mention of it, but you don't give it value. How does that work?
It's kind of case by case.
Yeah. Okay.
Good example of one, if it's typical for the market, you would not give it value directly because I'm not the permit police. I don't say would a buyer be willing to pay for this addition. So I had a very interesting scenario about 2 months ago in Los Gatos, and they had this illegal in-law unit in the back of the house.
All right.
And I was talking to the guy. It was huge and it was nice, and I was measuring it. And he just bought the house maybe 3 months earlier. So I'm measuring his in-law unit, and I'm like, is this legal? And he says, I don't know, but I got this letter from the city of San Jose, and it's from the code enforcer. So what I'm assuming happened, he bought the house. The neighbor behind him said, now that there's a new owner, I want that gone. So if I hypothetically gave that value, and for $50,000, $100,000, whatever it would be, and all of a sudden the city goes tear it down, then, him showing me that letter was my kind of, I can't really give it value because someone's onto it, and they may want to get rid of it because it wasn't legal for the zoning.
Okay, that's a great example in the story. Now the good news is the city, if people if they're so inclined, the city is actually promoting now for the first time since I can remember. They're encouraging detached or in-law units now because of the housing shortage, and of course, that's tax revenue too, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. How about let's talk a little bit about the purchase again in a market now where it seems like, I don't know, how long, you and I have been doing this long enough. We remember, in 05 and 06, I don't know, was the peak 6 or first part of 7?
6 or 7, yeah.
And then it just started coming down, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember, and you remember too, the values just took a hit all over the place. And now here we are, back up, if I'm not mistaken, beyond where we were in the heights,
beyond,
right?
Yes,
well beyond.
Yes.
So how do you... what kind of challenges is that? What kind of problems does that challenge or force you to do in your job when you go out and it's a market that just seems to be climbing like this?
So when doing comps, you use data that's historical. It's a comp that sold 2 months ago, a month ago, 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. So if everything's increasing, your sale of your property, if it's equal properties, it's going to be higher than the last one. So you have to give some value to the market. There's 10 offers on the property, 10 people offered. They'll give me the contracts. They'll explain, look, 10 people, 5 of them offered the same price. So that's kind of a market. Just 5 people wanting this property at this price that's higher than anything that's sold. So you really do everything you can. You use a pending, if you can, that help capture the current market conditions, because a pending is today or within the last week or two. So that's a real good way of capturing it. I'll hang my hat on a pending because that's the best indicator of today's current market conditions. So it is a challenge because every new sale is the new high watermark in the neighborhood, and that's trying to support that is tough. And sometimes it's above that where someone overpays because they've put offers on 20 houses before and they're desperate and they'll overpay. I'm just saying don't have an appraisal contingency, don't have a finance contingency, and have cash because you should know it's probably not going to be supported. The realtor should know.
Right.
It's not going to be supportable.
That's a good point. What type of things, maybe go through kind of a list, if you will. Some of them may be obvious, but the great part about this show is I want to educate people as much as I can. What type of things would you say, be careful if someone's buying a house or considering things that really would have, potentially even what I would call long-term, could have an effect on the long-term value because, maybe right on a busy freeway, right? Your house is right next to the freeway, or maybe power poles right behind you, or a power plant, or I don't know. What kinds of things would you say of that nature that you might tell people, hey, listen, just know that you may have a beautiful place and a great spot, but because of this next to your house or about your house, it's just never going to be the same as maybe a house that doesn't have.
Yeah, that's true. Sense? Yeah, in an increasing market as we have today, that gap has shrunk.
Okay.
Between a house on a busy road and not.
Okay.
But when the market turns south and there's many more listings, that gap widens.
I see.
So I always tell people buy the worst house in the best location, and you can always fix the house if you can't move it from a bad location, busy road, backing electrical towers, anything like that. Freeway noise from behind you. So, Yeah, those things. But some people want to be in a neighborhood, and that's their only option, is to be on a busy road, and that's their kind of way to get in, and it's not a bad thing. It's just when the market turns south and there's 100 houses on the market, that's probably going to be the last one to sell. The marketability of that home goes down because of that negative external obsolescence or depreciation.
Yeah. How about the on a purchase? I guess it would be let's talk refinance for a minute, because that's obviously the consumers there. On a purchase, it's different. The property is changing hands. But on a refinance, John, you show up. How much can we talked about the homeowner knowing what's going on with their home, some of the personal things, the changes, remodels, whatever. What kind of conversation, comments can they have is reasonable, is realistic? In other words, you come and someone says, hey, listen, John, I've done my homework, and, I know a lot of people say this is 1.4, but I know it's 1.6, and because of this. And sometimes they're just throwing stuff in the air and see if it, or in the wall and see if it sticks, right? But do you get stuff like that? Do you get
all the time?
That's probably a stupid question.
But no, anyone can tell me anything. The more information, the better. And they're not supposed to influence me, but they're not. If they're giving me their opinion, it's their opinion. Yeah. And I think my house is worth way more than it's worth. And I'm an appraiser. Yeah. And this is my own home. I think is worth a lot more. So I get their point. Yeah. But when I come in, it's supportable. And I always tell people, I'm not the final judge or jury on your appraisal. Right. It's going to go through a review. They're going to pull their own comps on that. If I don't use the correct comps and I use something that's supporting a higher number than the actual market value, they're going to catch it. Right. And I'm going to put my license at risk, so I don't do that. But I try to be as honest and ethical as I can. And
one of the things I greatly appreciate about John, and if you use him, you'll understand, is that you could have all the questions in the world, and it won't bother him. He'll ask them, and he'll be honest about them, ethical about them, and tell you exactly what he thinks, what the market is, the data, the research. But there are some appraisers that it's just a personality thing, right? Some will just say, I don't want to talk about it, or I can't talk to you about it, or at least you'll do the courtesy of have a human interaction with people and say, hey, listen, give me your opinion or thoughts or whatever. There's nothing against the law to do that.
No, and I think a lot of appraisers do believe that it's against the law to have a realtor to kind of hear some comps. Yeah. I'm loving it. The more data, the better. You're helping me out. Other ones going, you're trying to influence me. You're not trying to influence them. It's okay to talk to appraisers. Right. But after the transaction is done, they're not supposed to contact us just by the law. Okay. So that is one issue. The borrowers or the lenders aren't supposed to contact us. It has to go through the management company, who is our client. But before that, I'm talking to realtors all the time and chat with them about the property. And I'm not going to be influenced. I'm not going to give them any information. But we're all just out, doing our jobs. Yeah.
So again, if someone wants to come out, a licensed appraiser, just to appraise their home for some reason, let's say they're not getting a refinance or purchase, they're just for some reason they wanted an appraisal. You could help them with something like that.
Absolutely. Okay. We do a lot of those.
Okay. And what again, if you give your information out, website, phone number, what's the best way to reach you if someone wanted to use you?
You can go to montgomeryappraisal.com, singular, and our number is 408-995-6012.
Yeah, very good. So a couple minutes before this break, let's talk a little bit about the areas. I guess a lot of people. Let's see how we want to. So we talk a lot in this area. We talk about schools. What brings value up, right? I mean, a lot of people they don't quite understand. Let's say zip code in San Jose, John, is the like house, right? But then you have Los Gatos or Saratoga. And I think people get this now because of the information on the internet now, and there's so much knowledge out there. There's so much information a person could gain now. But what are some of the biggest things that have the value effects on areas? Is schools one of them? What other?
Schools is
the
huge.
Biggest one, probably?
Yeah, probably the biggest one.
Okay. That's probably the single biggest if they have the high-rated schools. That seems to be.
Yeah, I would say that in most cases, but when you get into Los Gatos, people may go, well, I like this house. It's not in the LG Los Gatos schools in Campbell, but they don't mind paying private school money, or their kids are going to private schools anyway. So it does have some influence, but not. It really depends. It is big, but it just depends on what area.
No, that's a good point. And we were faced with the same thing. We went in our direction. We looked at all the different areas back in 2005 when we bought in Willow Glen. And it was because our kids were going to, at the time, private school, so it didn't matter so much. But you're right, that comes into play. for a lot of people when they're looking at areas.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take our last break. When we come back, John and I are going to finish up. Again, if you have any questions for John, maybe you're getting ready to get an appraisal, maybe you are getting ready for a refinance, or about ready for a purchase, this is the guy to talk to, 1-800-516-1220. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. We'll be back with you to finish up in just a couple minutes.
For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
The world is changing, and so is real estate. It's changing in ways that give consumers more control with more affordable options. So what are your options? Hi, this is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. I've been on the air educating and informing consumers for over 7 years now. I'm excited to announce that there is now a more efficient and cost-effective way to buy and sell real estate. Our team at Real Estate Radio Live is launching a new program designed to help buyers or sellers like you in real estate, lending and title. That's right, we'll coordinate the entire transaction for you. So you benefit by working with the same team, saving time and saving money. We'll guarantee you'll not only be working with the most qualified, hand-picked experts in real estate, lending, and title, but you will also save a significant amount of money in all three services as well. Act now and benefit from changing the world of real estate. Call 408-838-9060. Go to RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live, streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back in. Thank you for joining us this afternoon as we wind down the show. Just about 6 or 7 minutes left. In studio, we have our guest, John Montgomery with Montgomery Appraisals, kind enough to spend some time with us discussing, educating us in the world of appraisals. There's a lot that goes into it. We're in a really unique, crazy market, as most of you know if you're listening to this. If you're a homeowner or if you own properties, you understand, you've had appraisals, you know what they're about in terms of why they need them. We were just talking a little bit off air how in some cases financing and appraisals, the whole business is a little bit crazy because it doesn't make sense sometimes, but it is. But we live in a regulated world with a lot of things that go on in financing. So, but before we go, we want to make a couple different, just to cover a couple more things. John, on the appraisal side, what constitutes the cost of the appraisal? Because I get that sometimes too. You know, a consumer will say, you know, what's the cost of the appraisal? Ours is pretty standard unless it gets into, I don't know the threshold right off the top of my head, but you know, I would say if the property's maybe over $2 million plus, or it's in a different location or something, then all of a sudden the cost, you know, we have to quote because it goes up a little bit. But it seems for the most part they're fairly. For us anyway, the costs are pretty standard unless there's something unique about the property. What constitutes that usually? Yeah,
first off, value doesn't have any bearing because that would be illegal. To say it's $2 million, I'm going to charge you more. Then I want to appraise everything higher.
Right.
Like a $2 million house in Saratoga might be easier than a house in San Jose. A $1 million house because there's a lot of $2 million comps.
Right.
It's based on the complexity.
Okay.
And our fees are based on what the management company gets us when it's a lender transaction.
Okay.
And if it's too difficult, I'll ask for a different fee. But it's based on the complexity. If it's I did one today in Morgan Hill, 3 acres, 2,700 square foot, not a lot of comps.
Mm-hmm.
And there just wasn't a lot of data. I was going to have to drive miles and miles to get comps, and it was just a lot more difficult to write up the report, so I charged more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's basically based on time for me.
Got it. Okay.
You know.
What would if a consumer gets an appraisal and it's in their hand, and again, we're not experts at this, and even though I've been in this business forever, I always rely on you too, on your expertise. So a consumer in their hand, and you know they know enough, and they kind of look at their neighborhood, they look at what are some of the things that they would look at to maybe determine, let's say they had some questions about the value, or some questions like, God, this doesn't seem right. What would be the thing that you would recommend that they do? Look at the appraisal themselves, go back to the realtor, the lender. What would you say?
Well, if it's a financial transaction, you know, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mae, they can't talk to us. But if it's anyone else, I always say, call me. I'll give a report for a date of death or a divorce. And I'll say, look, here's my report. Call me. You don't read these. I'm happy to talk to you about it. I do that as a service. And then, but for them, they'll have to go back to their lender.
Right.
And say, I think he's wrong, and then they're going to have to find better comps that we didn't use, or why did he make this adjustment for condition when mine's just like it, and he brought the value down $100,000. So there'd be a rebuttal, and then that would go to the lender, and that would go to the management company, and then it'd come back to me, and I would look at the data they give me, and if I made a mistake, I made a mistake.
Right. Yeah, and the one thing part about that, about the purchase transaction too, which we get involved a lot, and then the consumers do too. And the one thing I'll say to those real estate agents that are listening out there, I know a lot follow the show, is that please do us a favor, do me a favor. When appraisals come in, if you think it's low, be armed with the rebuttal. In other words, be armed with information to prove it. I've had situations where an appraisal will come in and the listing agent will call me and they'll be upset and they'll say, Joe, that's not right. And I'll say, well, why isn't it not right? And they'll say, it's just not right. I could tell you. And I said, well, no, we need proof. So my suggestion, and especially, if realtors are listening to this, and most of the good realtors, they know that. I mean, but some, it's amazing still, this is not an opinion, right? And it kind of gets back to that. Some people, even consumers and even people in our industry, will all of a sudden have this opinion. Well, it's not about an opinion. It's about a report with data and information. And so if you think it's not correct, there's a proper process to go through in which to do that. So, for instance, I would ask the real estate agent, and some of them are really good. They'll say, hey, Joe, I'm going to send you 4 comps why I think there's a case that this is not correct. Perfect, right? That's what we need. We need information and not just people's opinion. And I think that's the one thing consumers need to know, too. If there's for some reason when you're communicating with the lender, that's our job, of course, to look into that. But there are, so in fairness to these consumers, the things that come up. We talked about it before we came on the show. We just got a minute or so left. But, hey, just like in any industry, you have some appraisers that don't do a very good job.
Yeah, I make mistakes too. I'm not perfect.
We all do.
Sometimes I get a rebuttal and they'll say, and I'll look at the comps and go, I missed this, and I will change the value. If I make a mistake, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we cut out, we got a minute or so left. Real quick, if you want to give your information back out. Again, John, one more time before we go.
Yeah, it's MontgomeryAppraisal.com, singular, and it's 408-995-6012.
Very good. Well, John, thanks. It's been a good time having you on the show. We'll have you back maybe in a couple months and get a little review and see about this crazy market.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
All right, again, you're welcome. Again, if you need an appraiser, John's the one to call. You need someone that's competent, someone that's been in the area, been doing this for quite a while. He gave you the information out, and you could always contact me as well. Be sure to remember that before we duck out, too, we're on the air 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, from 3 to 4. You could tune in on the radio, KDOW 1220 AM, and you could also listen live online at kdow.biz. So before we go, too, just be sure, tune in tomorrow. Every Friday we have Buddy and Bobby on, and we usually do different takes on the things that they're doing in and out internationally. We did some stuff on Nicaragua, and also I think it was Belize last time. So we continue to do that Monday through Friday from 3 to 4. All right, we're going to have to duck out. Thanks again for tuning in. Remember, for more information, you could always go to reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks for checking in today. Thanks for following us. Thanks for following us on Facebook and the radio and also online. Take care. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com. Tune in, log in, download our podcast. Discover more at reradiolive.com. reradiolive.com.